Hello everyone. So in this session we are going to study about the diversity in the living world. So in the last sessions we studied about the characteristic features and defining properties of living organism. So in that session, in that concept, we came to know if we want to call on an organism to living organism, it should have some characteristic feature, and if we start comparing to the living organism and non-living organism, it has some common similarities and dissimilarities. So that similarity and dissimilarity we studied in the last sessions. So growth is the characteristic feature of living organism, but growth we cannot call this character as a defining property to the living organism, because non-living organisms also grow by deposition of some particles, some substances onto the surface of what non-living organism. The non-living organism, the materials can also be grown. So growth is not a defining property. And after that we came across the reproduction. The reproduction takes place in all living organism. Living few organism like a mule and a sterile human and worker bee, they do not reproduce. Though they do not reproduce, the reproduction also cannot be differentiated into, cannot be defined into a defining property of a living organism. After the reproduction we came across the metabolism. The metabolism, so this is the whole total sum of the chemical reaction takes place inside the cell. So these kind of reactions we cannot take place, we cannot do in laboratory condition or in vitro condition. So because of that nature of the cell, it means a cell, whatever the reaction takes place inside the cell, we cannot conduct those reactions outside the cell. We can conduct the reactions outside the cell or in the laboratory condition. Those reactions can be called as exothermic or endothermic reactions, but here whatever the reactions takes place inside the cell, because of that property which is having in living organism, that what we are going to call that characteristic is known as metabolism. So this is the only one character seen in living organism. So what we called this property is known as a defining property of living organism. After the metabolism we gone through one more what is that defining property or characteristic feature, that is nothing but consciousness or respond to stimuli. The respond to stimuli, the plants and animals and all living organism responds to the external stimulation. Living one organism, it means the patient who is in coma, he cannot respond to the outside environment or outside world. So because his body or his heart or brain, it is set up by a machine, so under the control of those machines he is surviving, but the chemical reactions are taking place inside his body. So to that patient also we can consider, we can call him also he is responding to the stimuli, he is conscious related to or regarding to the to his body or to his cells. So but one more I want to tell here, the consciousness or respond to stimuli, these property, this is the only one property. One more is metabolism and consciousness or respond to stimuli. This property we cannot see in living organism. So because of this we can assure the living organism they have a special defining property, that is metabolism and consciousness or respond to stimuli. After this we will move on to the next concept, diversity in the living world. So in the last session itself I explained or I told you some definitions, right? Diversity in the living world, this is the next concept of this chapter. The first concept is what is living organism. So we find out the reasons reasons and answer for the first concept. Now we are in the second concept, that is diversity in the living world. So what is diversity in the living world? How many organisms are there on the earth? Number of organisms, different types of organisms, and how many different species of plants are there, animals are there. Plants are also known as flora, animals are also known as fauna. Okay, plants, flora, animals, the scientific term it is fauna. Okay, different species of flora, different species of fauna, which is seen on the earth. So that term indicates the biodiversity. Biodiversity is nothing but the number and type of organisms present on the earth. So the term indicates, the term defines the different number of organism, the different type of organism known as biodiversity. So we have a huge biodiversity. In the huge biodiversity, how to name all those animals, how to name all those plants, on what basis we are going to describe all those animals and plants. If I take one organism, first I want to conclude that whether it is a plant or animal. After concluding that, I should start describing that organism. If it is a plant, if I confirm that it is a plant, I make sure this plant is producing its own food or not. If it is not, it comes under the parasite. Okay, so if it is not producing any type of food or any type of starch, if it is dependent on other organism, it comes under consumer or animal, we can say. So if I call that organism an animal, whether it is a small, whether it is a insect, whether it is a mammal, whether it is a sponges, so like this I have to describe right from the beginning till the end. So what is the right from the beginning and till the end? So if we start describing an organism, at last we will name that organism by giving two components that I'll tell you. So describing means putting all those describing properties in such a manner so that we can easily make out, for example, kingdom so and so, class so and so, phylum and family, and division and genus and species. If I write all these systematic positions of that living organism, I can easily make out, yes, this organism belongs to all these systematic classification. Okay, so how to so we have number of books now. By seeing those books, by reading, by getting information, by collecting information from all those books or from the website, we can easily make out. But earlier the scientists, what they used to do, how they discovered the organisms, number of organisms, names has been given. Till today, few number of millions of organisms and their scientific names are given. How they described, on what basis they described? To describe the characteristic feature and put them into a proper position or the systematic position or in the classification, they were provided by rules or on basis of principles and criteria which is present in this book. in this book, what actually it is, what is ICBN and ICZN. Let me expand this word or these letters. I indicates international, B indicates code, sorry, C indicates code, B indicates botanical, N indicates nomenclature. So, what is this? International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. What actually it is this is a book having number of principles and criteria to describe one organism. Consider, just imagine you find one new organism. So you start writing all the characteristic feature of the organism, whether it is a plant. If it is a plant, it should come under the kingdom Plantae. If it is an animal, it should come under the kingdom what is that, Animalia. The class, if it is having a jaws, it bears a jaws, and if it is having appendages, if the then next what is the habitat of the organism, whether it is living in a water media or it is surviving on the soil surface. So like this you have to write all the characteristic feature of the new organism. So how you will collect all those right or described characteristic feature? So you will get all the description, all the right principles and criterias in this book. If the organism is a plant, the plant description, principles and everything will be in this book, and it is accepted all over the world. Earlier, so this book was written under this so many species and so many organisms named. And the next is, so this is all about the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. So what is nomenclature? Nomenclature is nothing but, write down the definition for nomenclature. So here, as I told you in the last session, nomenclature, there is a need to standardize the organism in such a way all over the world, in such a way that all over the world should accept that name. So if I call an animal like dog, we can make out, yes, I am talking about a dog itself, which is a mammal and which is an animal. So animals, mammals and dogs, and it is carnivorous, right? So like this, number of the different characters will be present. So if I go to other countries, I'll talk, if I take the word dog, maybe they'll get confused. Okay, so those who know the English language, they'll come to know dog. I'm talking about other species dog. When I start giving a scientific name to that dog, so the scientific name is Canis lupus. So that is the standard name for that species. Wherever you go, in the what is that, the corner, in everywhere around the world, the dog is having a standard name known as Canis lupus. So by taking that scientific name or standard name, the people used to consider, yes, we are talking about that animal. So nomenclature is, there is a need to standardize the standardize the species by taking a standard name which should be accepted all over the world. And how to nomenclature, how to give the name Canis lupus. It is not a English language, it is not a Hindi or anything else. So in which language it should be? So, and then how to write the name. I on that day I wrote one scientific name. I guess I wrote, but I don't remember. So I'll write now. Okay, I write all the rules and regulations of writing the scientific names and all. So we have some rules and regulations we should follow while writing the scientific names of any organism. So I was talking about the language, in which language it is, it has to. Okay, if we start describing characters, if we want to give a new name to that organism, new name means it should not be present in any other places. So that before naming the organism, we have to identify that organism. Okay, identification is very important. So after identification, after nomenclature, after naming that organism, we can consider this is the one of the important and new organism you can discover by yourself. Okay, you can discover, you can research and you can discover the new organisms. So after the identification, after the nomenclature, so what we were talking about, we were talking about the one book. In that book, all the rules, principles, criterias will be present. By seeing those principles, criterias, any of the scientist can give the description and he can give the nomenclature to the organism. So this book will be having the description of plant. So the book name is ICBN, and next is you just make out, you just write by yourself. ICZN is nothing but International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. Zoological nomenclature, the name itself saying it is related to, it will be having the characteristic features of animals. So you should know the basic concept of the plant and animal. The plant is it is having a basic concept like it is a producer, and animal, the basic concept is maximum of the animals they locomote. Only few organisms, few living organism which comes under animal, they fixed to the substratum, and the maximum of them will be living in the marine form, comes under the phylum Porifera. Example is sponges. Okay, ICBN and ICZN. So with this we'll move on to the next. Each and every organism having two components. They are having two components. Each and every organisms means we are talking about the nomenclature, right? We are talking about the description and identification. We are giving some names, some standard names. That standard name will be having two components. The first component is known as generic name, and the second component is specific epithet. Generic name and specific epithet. So what actually it is? So each and every organism scientific name, it is in a two component. Those components, the first out of those component, the first component is known as generic name, and the second component name known as specific epithet, having two components in the organism or in the scientific name. That procedure is known as binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature. Binomial nomenclature is naming the system. Naming the organism by two components. Naming organism by two components. The two components are these. First is generic name and specific epithet. Binomial nomenclature, the name itself saying bi means two, nomial having name, nomenclature means we are going to standardize the organism which is accepted, which should accept all over the world. Binomial nomenclature, if we give some examples to this binomial nomenclature, as I just now told you, Canis lupus, examples I am telling here, and next is Triticum aestivum, Homo sapiens, Musca domestica, ICA. What is this? Yes, it is nothing but the scientific names, the scientific name of different organism. Canis lupus, this is the scientific name of dog. Triticum aestivum, this is the scientific name of wheat. Homo sapiens, this is the scientific name of human. Musca domestica, this is the scientific name of housefly. Okay, so each organism having two names, two components. The first component is known as generic name and the second component is known as specific epithet. Canis, this is the genus name. Lupus, this is the species. Genus, species, genus, species, genus, species. Okay, so like this, each and every organism, maximum of the organism, they will be having two components. Why I am telling maximum? Why not 100%? Few of the organisms, they'll be having three names. Those organisms having three names as a scientific name, those are known as trinomial nomenclature, like Naja. So this is the one scientific name of a snake having three names, three components. The first two are known as the genus and the next is known as the species. You can see all the three names are similar. Okay, so few of them will be having three components. Those organisms with three components are known as trinomial nomenclature, but maximum of them will be having two components. The first component are known as generic name or genus, the second component are known as specific epithet or species. Genus, species. Okay, so the next is, who discovered this? Who gave these all scientific names or standard names and all? One scientist named as Carolus Linnaeus he. This is not the scientific name. It is a scientist name, Carolus Linnaeus. He discovered maximum of the organisms and he named all those organisms, and it is accepted all over the world. There is a rule, like for example, I have written here four species names, 4 scientific names here. There is in a practice, like we can write the scientist name after the species. What actually it is, like for example, if we know the scientist who discovered the scientific name of the organism, we can write his name in an abbreviated form, like Canis lupus. This is the scientific name of dog discovered by Carolus Linnaeus. If we know, we can write like this. Only this is not compulsory. We can write, if we know the scientist name, we can, in that case only we can write the scientist name in the abbreviated form. So like this, Linnaeus. This is not mandatory. Okay, so who actually he? Carolus Linnaeus, he also known as a father of taxonomy. Taxonomy, this is the branch of biology which deals with the study of systematic positions of organisms. So whatever the systematic positions are there, whatever the taxa are there. So what is taxa? Taxa is a scientific term given to the organism. Whatever we are calling this as Canis or Lupus, or I guess in the British course I wrote kingdom, phylum, class, genus, species of human being, right? So all those systematic term, all those scientific term that I used while writing the systematic position of human, all those are known as taxa. Okay, so in the next session itself I am going to teach you about the systematic position. There I will tell you the meaning of the word taxa. Okay, how to which we are going to call the taxa. Okay, so taxonomy branch, Carolus Linnaeus, he called as a father of taxonomy. Okay, the next is coming to, so you have to remember these all, my children, my dear students. In the examination, the board examination, they used to ask you whatever I have written here, few examples I have written here. No, like these are Canis lupus. I just randomly selected few scientific names, but based on the NCERT book, we have few more organisms name with their systematic positions and all that I will tell you. If you want, you can write, but the actual syllabus scientific names I'll write it on the board in the next session. Okay. The next is we are going to learn the rules of binomial nomenclature. The rules of binomial nomenclature. The first rule is, so just imagine what you have to imagine here. I am going to write the scientific name of my own discovered organism. Everything is done, everything is over. I have described the characteristic feature of that organism. Finally, I found out a new organism name that I am going to write it in a book. If you are writing in the book, if you are handwriting, if you are writing, the That rule I will tell you in the next second. It will come in the second rule. The first rule of the binomial nomenclature is it should have two components. Just now I told you, no, two components or three components, whatever it may be. The first component should be known as genus, and the second name of the scientific name should be known as a species. So this is the first rule of writing the which comes under binomial nomenclature. So these are all the rules, and it is important that they used to ask in the examination. This is the repeated question. Write the rules of binomial nomenclature, mention the rules of binomial nomenclature. The rules are as follows. Each and every scientific name, it will be having two components. The first component is known as genus and the second component is known as species. The next is the binomial nomenclature, or the names which we are going to call that as a scientific name. The language we used to give those scientific names and all, the language is Latin. It should be in a Latin language. And if we are typing in a computer or in any media, it should be in italics, like little bit slant position, the italics language will be right. So italics, it is just a typing a media, but the language is the Latin. The scientific names are in the Latin language. Okay, so I'll just delete this. I'll describe that italics and all in the next rule. Just make it clear, the scientific names language must be in a Latin language. Okay, and then if it is written, it should be underlined. If you are writing the scientific name in a book or in the examination, wherever you write, if you write the scientific name, you have to underline this scientific name. It means what? It means it is identified as a unique name, a unique letter. Why it is known as unique? Because we are mentioning this as a scientific name. That's why if we are writing the scientific name, we have to underline this. These are all the rules of what? Binomial nomenclatures. Mangifera indica, this is the scientific name of mango, and those who are writing the scientific names, they have to underline the scientific name. So one underline for the genus and one more for the species. You can see I have given the gap in between these two components, so you have to follow that also. And if someone is typing the scientific name, the typing form should be italics. So no need of underlining while typing. If the typing form should be, if you give the typic form to the italics, it will be it will visible as a special name, a unique or a specific name. It is considered as a specific or special name. So you have to remember all these. If it is written, it should be underlined. If it is typing, it should be in a italic form. And then the next component is So you have to follow all these. You have to make out all the components and all. The binomial nomenclature or the scientific name, it has to be in a 2 components, because earlier I told maybe it will be in the form of trinomial nomenclature, like few of the organisms will be in a trinomial system, trinomial form, but maximum of the scientific names will be in a binomial form. So 2 components, out of 2 components, the one is genus and the another one is species. And the next is, the first component is known as genus and species, and the language of the scientific name is a Latin language. Okay, and if it is written, it should be underlined, and if it is typing, it should be in a italics form. One more thing is, if you see this Mangifera indica, I have started the Mangifera indica first letter in a big form. This is the first word. The first word, first letter is a capital one, and all the others are smaller fonts, or in the smaller fonts. This is also one rule of writing the scientific names, or writing the description of binomial nomenclature. The first letter of genus is in capital form, and all the other is in the small fonts. Forms, you just write it as forms. Here I'll write fonts, small fonts, capital forms and small fonts. This is the fourth rule of binomial nomenclature. If you want to write all the letters in a big font or in a capital font, there will be no problem. There is not a big issue. But if you write the genus name first letter as big, and again you are showing the species name first letter in a big form, that is a wrong way of writing the scientific name. You have to remember this all in these years. Wherever you write the scientific names, you have to follow these and you have to write. Okay, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Botulicum, and a number of organism scientific names will come. Aita. Okay, next is, after the rules of binomial nomenclature, as I told you, the scientist's name, if you know the scientist name, you can mention after writing the scientific name in the abbreviated form. If you have any doubt, you can ask me anytime, but don't get confused. Okay, and remember the definitions. Many definitions came till now, like what is reproduction, what is growth, what is metabolism, what is response to stimuli, and what is biodiversity, what is classification, and what is nomenclature, identification, what is binomial nomenclature, trinomial nomenclature. Number of concepts came till now, till today's session. So you have to write just you have to highlight those definitions, one line definitions, those are very important. Okay, so the living world is, the weightage of this chapter is 3 mark. Okay, so first in the board examination, the first question in the first main will be from this chapter, and the next question, the next second, in the second main, it will be in a 2 mark, it is in a 2 mark questions. Okay, the next second main, first question or second question will be from this chapter. Okay, so don't leave this chapter, this is very much easy. If you have any doubt, ask me.